The Nike Next Alphafly, Kipchoge's sub 2 hour marathon shoe. How has it held up after 100 miles? Hello and welcome back to The Vegan Runner. So today we're taking a closer look at this super shoe. It's been on the scene for about 18 months now, so I'm sure you've come across this shoe before, so I won't dwell too much on the technical specifications. It's still Nike's #1 carbon-plated offering, the shoe that Eliud Kipchoge still prefers to wear, like for instance when he's picking up gold medals running the marathon in the Olympics, or is busy just breaking the sub 2 hour marathon mark. Now at the time of its release, the most dramatic and obvious shift from its predecessor, the Vaporfly, were these two chunky AirPods, but we also have a completely new upper that Nike call the Atom Knit. Even more of the ZoomX foam and a carbon fiber plate that scales up with your shoe size. I picked up a pair of these shoes in December 2020 and have since put them through their paces over 100 miles. Obviously this shoe is meant for race day, and most reviewers seem to think that they're at their best up to around the sort of 100 to 200 mile mark before their bounce and springiness begins to subside. Now its recommended retail price of £280 already puts this shoe as the most expensive on the market. And when you factor in the price per mile, assuming that you get about 200 miles out of it, you're paying a whopping £1.40 per mile. So much for that cheap and inexpensive sport that we call running. Now, any shoe that you run a PB in will always have a special place in your heart. In this shoe, I ran a 1:18 half marathon, my quickest to date, and so it will always be fondly remembered. Now, that aside, let's get into the good and the not so good over the last 100 miles. So let's start with the upper, the Atom Knit. It's so light and breathable, it's barely noticeable, which I think is how a decent upper should be. After 100 miles, there's some small signs of wear, but nothing that's really worrying me. The upper and tongue are all one piece, so it has this kind of seamless, like sock-like fit, but without that kind of tightness that I associate with other kinds of knitted uppers. It fits really well, it seems to mould quite nicely to your feet. There's a snug bit of padding on the inside of the heel, and the whole of the upper feels just really flexible, with every part being able to move quite freely. Running in warm weather is a joy in this upper, zero hot spots, it all feels just light and easy. The pull tab on the back of the heel is much needed. They can be a bit tricky to get on. Again, like most knitted uppers, but after 100 miles, nothing much has changed to the upper since I bought them. And in terms of its longevity, I think it's got a fair way to go yet. Onto the outsole then, and we've got this very unique, almost kind of like tadpole-like design going on, with one pretty thick piece of black rubber covering the forefoot, and two strips of lighter coloured rubber on the sort of lateral and medial sides of the, sort of mid to back foot, leaving a lot of exposed foam on the heel, and right in the centre there you can see the carbon fibre plate and the AirPods really clearly. I've been really impressed with the grip on this shoe, and I've had zero issues charging along at speed in wet, gritty conditions, and at no point did I feel like I was going to slip. There is a small amount of wear to the rubber and a little bit of cracking on the exposed foam, but I think it's easily got another couple of 100 miles on them, if not more. The Nike swoosh has lost some of its colour. They were a solid black when new, but you know, I don't think anyone's going to be too fussed about that. Onto the midsole then, they look really chunky, but stepping into them you just realise how chunky they are and just how much extra foam they've stuffed into them. The ZoomX foam has been around for a while now, so again I won't go into loads of detail on that, but it's a very comfortable foam, plenty of cushion and bounce. And where some carbon plated shoes can feel a bit unforgiving and firm, the Alphafly feels pretty mellow and soft, especially at those slower speeds. Yeah, and just one thing to say, at slower speeds, that foam, they do feel a little bit unbalanced, and I find you really have to focus on form whilst warming up in these, but once you climb up to the higher speeds, they really come into their own. The carbon fibre plate seems to really put you forward onto your toes and works along with that foam to propel you along like nothing else. I can't say I've noticed much of a change since I got them, and to now up into the 100-mile mark, to me they feel exactly the same as my first run in them. That carbon fibre plate's still got plenty of spring, plenty of propulsion in it. Now, I couldn't have said the same for the first iteration of the Vaporfly 4% and then the next percent as well. There was a really noticeable deterioration in the carbon fibre plate, and they both lost their spring almost exactly on the 100-mile mark. The Alphaflys are still bouncing along low like their first run, and I think and I hope they will go at least another 100 miles before I begin to notice any kind of breakdown in that plate. But it hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows. For each part of the shoe there is something mostly minor, but one pretty major thing that's making me consider other carbon plated shoes for the Brighton Marathon in April. Starting with the upper, these laces, I don't know, they kind of remind me of like Venetian lace or something, and they're kind of tricky to adjust. Fortunately, once you've dialed in the fit, the laces hold their position well, but overall I'm just not a fan of the kind of frilly look of them, and they're just a bit of a pain to tighten up and all that. And another minor issue really is that the midsole still suffers from that creasing that plagues this generation of super foams. Out of the box even you can see the small creases, and then after the first run they pretty much look like this, and I don't know, it somewhat detracts from the overall aesthetic of the shoe. With that added ZoomX foam, the thicker rubber in those AirPods, we also have a pretty steep increase in weight from its predecessor. Each shoe is about 20 grams heavier, which isn't a lot, but I was surprised at how much I noticed it moving from the Vaporfly NEXT to the Alphafly. By no stretch of the imagination is it a heavy shoe, but it was a noticeable difference, and generally they just felt a little less nimble than the Vaporfly. But my one major complaint is the outsole. It's so flipping noisy. Running that half marathon in them, and for 13 miles straight, all I could hear was the slap, 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 slap running of, slapping of this black rubber on the tarmac. And you know when when someone points out a noise that you haven't noticed before, and then you just can't unhear it after you've noticed it? It was like that, mile after mile, and I thought maybe it was just my pair of shoes, but I've since run with other people who are wearing them, and actually there's a guy who trains on the Tarka Trail. I sometimes see him wearing them, and I can hear him coming from about a quarter of a mile away. Now, given that they are a marathon shoe meant to be working for most people well over 2 hours, 3-4 hours, I think this would drive me crazy. And I just had a thought though. The half marathon I ran them in, and most of my training runs as well. But yeah, the half marathon that I ran them in was during, the height of sort of pandemic times when crowds weren't allowed on the course. So it's possible it was more noticeable without the background noise of lots of spectators, and it's just you and other athletes out there kind of running together. But it is definitely a loud shoe. Like I say, I've since run in races, and I can pretty much tell from if somebody's coming from behind me which Nike shoe they're wearing, they've got the Alphafly on. Apart from those issues though, I've really enjoyed running with this shoe. Despite its frankly ridiculous price tag, it is still at the cutting edge of running technology. It performs well and delivers a really fast ride. After 100 miles, it's holding up better than its predecessors. And as I find a new race shoe to take its place, I'm going to be more than happy using this for fast-paced runs and interval work, and on the occasional park run when I want a quick blast to check my 5k fitness and just put it all out there. Now, Nike's competitors are hot on their heels. I ran the Manchester Marathon in the Adidas Adios Pro, which I enjoyed more than the Alphafly, and the likes of Saucony and Hoka are making really big strides in catching up with Nike too. Now, coupled with the lower price tags of many of their competitors' shoes, I really hope that Nike starts to just bring that price tag of their super shoes down to at least be in line with the competition. But I don't know, I suppose whilst they're still adorning the feet of the greatest of all time, people who have more money than sense will keep buying them. If you're looking for shoes to train and race in, be sure to check out my other running shoe reviews and let me know your experience of these super shoes down below. Till the next one, be the best you.